Just by way of introduction, I know that Lisa knows me, but my name's Graham Croom from the Black Country Chamber, part of the membership team. Matt and Tom are unfortunately not one of my members, but I've had a nice chat with them earlier on, and they're going to give us all the information that we need to know about all the R&D tax changes that are coming up in the very near future. Yeah, as I said, they're based in Walsall from an accounts point of view on our system, but they are actually sat in sunny Stoke-on-Trent this morning, so it's lovely to have them on. And I think without any further ado, Matt, can I hand over to you and
yeah, that's great.
Get started. I can see another one's coming through,
yeah.
so hopefully the numbers will increase as we go. Okay,
That's fine.
Thank you, Matt.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, so as Graham said, so I'm Matt Hustwit. I look after business development, so I'm head of business development for DJH Mitton Clark. And to my right, I'm hoping that's the same on the screen, but this is Tom Whitworth, who's our R&D specialist, everything R&D, lives and breathes it and knows all about it. So it's great to have Tom with us this morning. Just a bit about us. So we're a Midlands-based accountancy firm, professional services firm. Office in Walsall, as Graham said, but we've also got an office in Stoke, Manchester, Chester, Leeds and Sheffield. So we've got a few that are dotted around. We very much like to react. So we're members of the chamber in every one of our areas. We interact with them really well, providing advice and support to clients. And we importantly listen back to what clients are telling us or asking us. And a lot of the time what we find is they're asking us about R&D, particularly as there's some changes coming up, which Tom can give you a bit of an overview with in a second. So this has been born out of that, really, just to give you a presentation on a couple of changes, a couple of things that are happening, what you can look out for, what you need to do. But without stealing any of Tom's thunder, I'll pass you over to Tom, who can start to go through. I'm in charge of technology, so hopefully I'm going to be able to share this presentation. What I will say, if you've got any questions, do you want to do questions after?
Yeah, I think
probably
so,
easier.
please.
We'll do questions at the end, and then if you've got a question, if you just want to put your hand up or put a question, if you've Ian, if you've not got access to a mic, if you want to put it in the chat box or something, we can respond. And obviously, if anybody wants to follow up with more in-depth or personal questions for their companies, we can obviously tackle that after as well. So over to you, Tom.
Well, thanks everybody, and good morning everyone. So we'll get the presentation started in just a moment. Basically, just as a heads up in terms of how it's been structured, it's a little bit about an introduction and bit of background on R&D tax reliefs themselves and how things stand at the moment, and which some of you may be familiar with. I think Lisa, you will be, for instance, but not sure how everyone has looked at this for their particular businesses, whether they claim or not claim. So I'll try and cover it quite broadly. That's the first half, and then the second half is bit more detail on the upcoming changes from HMRC and the R&D tax reliefs regime, and how that may or may not impact your business and what to kind of get ready for. Then we'll do some questions at the end if there are any. So
can I just ask, can everybody see that now?
Yeah, I can see it fine.
Yeah, brilliant.
Brill.
You have to give me a nudge.
Sorry, we're just trying to change the slide first thing. Okay, so yeah, so what we'll be covering, what are our R&D incentives, the example industries where businesses might be able to make claims, what the qualifying costs are to build up a qualifying claim, how a claim is produced ideally, or how we might approach putting a claim together for our clients, latest updates from HMRC, and a little bit on due diligence at the end as well. So broadly speaking, R&D tax reliefs are for businesses who are innovating. So corporation tax relief for limited companies making appreciable improvements in science or technology. So moving the technology forward, whether it's completely groundbreaking or even incrementally making improvements or designing and developing new things. At the moment, as of today, the relief available is, broadly speaking, approximately £25 for every 25% of every £1 spent innovating. That's an error on our slide. 25% for every £1 spent innovating for SME companies, but then also for larger companies under the RDEC regime, it's more like 10%. That's for larger companies or businesses that have been grant funded or have received subsidies for their R&D development work. So it's a little bit in between, a little bit of a hybrid at times as well. We'll come to this nearer the end, but the changes, those rates are changing from the 1st of April. So as we were saying, R&D tax relief is available to businesses making advances in science or technology whilst overcoming technological or scientific uncertainty in order to achieve those advances. Uncertainty is quite an important word at the moment with HMRC. They seem to have be emphasising that there needs to be technological or scientific uncertainty in projects rather than challenges as a comparison. So it can be for product development, it can be for process development, for instance, production process, and also software development. It can be for brand new products or software. It can be for improvements as well to existing products that you may have developed already. And the key to it is whether there are technical staff, such as engineers, solving technical problems to make that advance in technology. And that's the kind of summary of what we're looking for a qualifying R&D claim. Example industries, manufacturing, engineering, software development, pharma and scientific. Those industries together, whilst covering quite a lot of different sectors, they make over 70% of all the claims made each year. So it's a big area, particularly manufacturing and engineering. Here we go, 70% of claims made by these sectors: manufacturing, professional, which is quite broad, scientific and technical. So it's a big area, and the latest stats from HMRC suggest that there's about £8 billion of relief provided through these regimes, and over 70% of that by these kind of key sectors, which you might expect. So here's some examples of where you might see R&D in manufacturing. It can be for a range of things, depending on what your business actually does, but we're looking for the development of brand new or improved products, perhaps the digitization of manual machining processes, environmentally friendly packaging solutions, developing power packs with an increased operational life. So you might have got something that sort of looks a similar product to a previous one, but its output is more efficient, or it uses less energy, lighter materials, or environmentally friendly materials, etc. So that's where the incremental improvements or appreciable improvements to science or technology can be achieved. You might develop specialist tools to make help meet high specification product designs. You might have improved your existing equipment's capability, productivity of your production line, cost efficiency, safety or energy efficiency, and so on. Again, it keeps coming back to this appreciable improvement of the science and the technology in the field. You might have integrated new technologies with into legacy systems, or you might have made mechanical or digital modifications to production lines to increase productivity. There's a whole range of development that you might be undertaking. There's around 80,000 claims made per year. So there's a wide range of innovation going on in there. I'm sure there is in your businesses as well. So coming back to that 25% for the SMEs, the benefit of making an R&D tax relief claim, that's provided through your corporation tax via reduction or a refund, or maybe a tax credit as well. And that is built up by those people, predominantly speaking, the people who are helping making those advances for you. So staff salaries, people involved in the claim who are on your payroll, engineers, designers, etc. Put a portion of their salary, their gross salary, ER pension, bonuses, ER national insurance as well. A portion of that can go into the qualifying pot of costs. And the proportion would be how much time they've spent working on those projects and overcoming those technological uncertainties. Also subcontractors, so the third parties that you might be using in your claim, those costs are capped at 65%. There's also heat, light and power, and any software costs that you might incur to help you, say, design software, etc., CAD design. and so on. Those that's okay. Those categories are changing a little bit, but we'll come on to that. So ideally, how a claim is produced, it can be a manner of different ways. Basically, you're looking for a number that goes on your corporation tax return, and there's many ways of arriving at that. So it's predominantly putting together some costs, following those categories of qualifying expenditure relevant to your accounting expenditure in the year, and putting together that number that goes in the tax computation. It's recommended also that there is a technical narrative to accompany those costs, which basically explains to HMRC why your business is claiming for R&D tax relief. The technical narrative can come in many different forms, but ideally, what we'd be looking for, certainly what we look for our clients, is to produce a narrative on a project by project basis, looking for a few different key areas for that development and that project. And fundamentally, that means, what is the advance in technology or science that your business has been looking for in this project? What was the baseline in technology? Why was an advance needed, basically? What were the technological uncertainties or scientific uncertainties encountered in the project? And then what work was done to try and overcome those and achieve that advance? So technical narrative, although it doesn't need to be War and Peace or anything like that, doesn't have to be too long, a nice concise summary of the key technical parts of the project. And the key thing there we're looking for is why the technology or science has been moved forward, not necessarily why it's a commercial benefit for your business, albeit that's really important, or why your business might need it. It's why it's moving the technology forward. So once that report is ready and the costs are prepared, those costs go into CT computation, and that's all submitted to HMRC. And then when that has been processed by HMRC, they'll see a number for an R&D claim, but they'll also see an accompanying narrative to explain why there's a number there and to justify those costs. And then the result is a reduction in your corporation tax or a refund of tax you may have already paid, because claims can be made going back 2 financial years. So for instance, this March, we've still got till the end of March to make claims for the year ending March 21. So R&D activity from April 2020 is still in play. So that can lead to a refund of tax already paid, or it can also lead to a payment of a tax credit. So for loss-making businesses, if there's no corporation tax for a business, even if there's an R&D claim, it's still worthwhile to make it, because there's a tax credit, cash paid to a business from HMRC for qualifying claims. Alternately, that can not be cashed in, and those losses can be carried forward for future years for more profitable periods.
Okay.
Cheers. So hopefully that's okay as a background, but we can come back to it if there's any more questions in terms of R&D generally, and for manufacturing businesses in particular. But there's some important things that we feel like we need to draw to people's attention for these upcoming changes for R&D tax reliefs. So these are planned for the 1st of April. There is a budget next week. Not everything is completely set in stone yet, but as we stand, it looks likely that these things are going to be going ahead. So the main highlight is that the rates are changing. So from expenditure incurred from the 1st of April this year, the SME relief will reduce from that 25% to around 21.75%. So it's dropping down a little bit. The second line there is the additional deduction is reduced from 130% to 86%, but it's still an additional deduction of 86%, not quite as generous as 130 as it was. That 130 calculates into that 25%. The 86% calculates into that 21.75%. That could be a little bit less for loss-making businesses. It's just not going to be quite as generous going forward, but hopefully still worthwhile for businesses who are innovating and investing in doing so. Conversely to that, the RDEC rate for those larger companies, that's actually going to increase from 13% to 20%, or net 15% of every £1 of qualifying R&D expenditure. So what's happening there with the rates is there's a bit of an alignment. Both regimes, whilst far apart in terms of benefit, are getting a little bit closer now. And the prediction is that they're going to get even closer going forward, and there may just be one rate for everybody. Cheers. The second big change coming up for R&D tax relief is the way that claims are going to be processed, and going to have to be processed by companies who are making claims. So this is for companies whose year end begins on or after the 1st of April 2023. Their claims will have to be made in a digital format. So that's, as an example, the first year end that's going to probably hit is March 2024, because it's a year end that starts on or after the 1st of April 23. There might be some exceptions for shorter periods. So there's a long way to go to get ready for this. But importantly, for businesses who are already claiming, the process that they have to do that is going to change a little bit. And the key bit there is it's going to require some key additional information. And so when we're talking about the technical narrative to be provided to justify a claim, whilst at the moment that is suggested, and we suggested it's a good idea, this is going to be mandatory to accompany every claim. So those 4 questions I mentioned, the advance, the baseline, the uncertainties, work to overcome those uncertainties and achieve the advance, they're going to have to be explained via an online form for HMRC at the time that a claim is made, making sure that all those questions are answered. There's a few caveats. It's more like 50% of your R&D costs have to have a narrative to explain it, but generally speaking, a report's going to be required on a new form. Along with the technical information, there's going to be required a breakdown of the qualifying R&D expenditure. For businesses who are already claiming now, one difference you might see is that each project is going to have to have its own amount of R&D expenditure assigned to it as well and calculated. So say if you've got 4 projects, £100,000 expenditure, that needs to be split by those projects accordingly. So that might increase the sort of administration of putting together a claim. Claims will also have to be endorsed by a senior officer within the business. Doesn't necessarily have to be a director, is our understanding, but someone at that kind of level, basically saying to HMRC, someone at the business has approved this claim, and the business wants to make it as it stands. There's also going to be some details of any agent that might have worked with the business on the claim. So for instance, as accountants and R&D tax advisors for many of our clients, we would be the agent on there. So it's just providing references to that. There may be third parties who work with you on your claim, or it may be that you do it yourself and there'd just be nothing to answer there. So that's what's going to be required. Just lastly on this bottom paragraph, I won't read all that sentence, but it's quite kind of tricky. This relates to businesses who have never claimed before or haven't claimed in any of the previous 3 financial periods. So from accounting periods beginning on or after the 1st of April this year. So again, that March 24 example, that business wants to make an R&D claim for that year, but never has made one before, or hasn't made one in any of the last 3 financial periods. They're going to have to pre-notify HMRC to say that they are going to be making a claim. And that needs to be done within 6 months of the period end that they intend to claim for. So along with the top bit of information on this slide, this is called additional information. That'll be an additional information form. There's another form, a pre-notification form as well. So the administrative requirement is increasing quite a lot, and the businesses will need to be aware of the time frame for making that pre-notification, particularly because of that 6-month deadline. So that was probably quite a lot of information there. There's just a few kind of additional bits of changes coming up as well. There's a big emphasis on supporting UK-based innovation. A lot of claims currently might include subcontractors, so third parties that are businesses who have provided R&D support for UK businesses, but they're not based in the UK. They may be an overseas company, done the R&D on behalf of a UK business, so perhaps software development, for instance. Going forward, again from this April, expenditure will be limited to expenditure incurred in the UK, particularly subcontractor work and externally provided workers. It's going to have more of an impact on some businesses than others. There are some exceptions, but it's not quite clear exactly how those exceptions work yet. But again, keep using the word broadly, but broadly speaking, that's what we expect. And then the last kind of big change coming up as well is the qualifying expenditure categories is going to increase slightly. So those staff costs, subcontract costs, software costs, etc., they're going to be expanded to include cloud computing, storage and hosting, and the purchase of data sets, etc. So again, probably more for software claims, but basically anything, not anything, but things that might be in the cloud, expenditure incurred for having some of your development platform to be undertaken in the cloud, there'll be potential to be included as qualifying costs in your claim. So expanding the scope and modernising the regime somewhat through those changes. So this is the last slide. So we've hopefully covered R&D generally and the upcoming changes. I just wanted to mention additionally, because you're manufacturers, there's an additional relief to R&D tax relief, which is called Patent Box. This is for businesses who own or exclusively license UK or European patents. And the headline there is the 10% effective tax rate on profits derived from patented technology. So if your business owns a patent and it's got a sales line that you make a lot of sales for with of a product that contains a patented invention, at the moment you'll be paying tax of corporation tax of 19%, going up to 25% soon. The effective rate of tax on those profits would actually only be 10% if you made a patent box claim. So it's something to look at if you have got patents and you've never looked at this before. Can be complicated to claim, but certainly worth looking into, and we can support businesses with that certainly as well. So thank you very much from me. I hope that was not too kind of whistle stop, but hopefully it was helpful, and I guess it gives us the opportunity if there are any questions.
We have,
guys as well.
Yeah, we have had some questions. Is it just one point from me, Tom? Is it? I'm just noticed that obviously you mentioned that rates are reducing. Is it fair to say that HMRC are tightening up, and are they expecting there to be more companies that are locked into a bit deeper, or?
Yeah, so our understanding from the change of the rates is that anecdotally, the amount of benefit being provided is probably too high, or considered to be too high or too expensive. There was also talk in the autumn statement about it not quite performing as well as it would like, because it is meant to be an incentive to innovate. And so those changes are certainly a reflection of HMRC's greater attention on compliance of the regime. That's coupled with supposedly 100 new inspectors being hired in the last year or so to inquire into claims and look at them in a bit more detail. And again, with those additional information requirements, the first time there's actually a requirement to produce a technical report. So all those things combined really make it making businesses and their advisors look more carefully about what they're claiming and why, whether they do qualify, whether claims are being put together correctly. And so yeah, that's one kind of impact of that.
Brilliant. Okay, so we've had a couple of questions on the chat. So first one from, I think I'm saying this right, Lakmahate. Do staff need to keep a timesheet on time spent on R&D?
I think it's a good suggestion if that's sort of a suggestion. I think ideally that would help in terms of building up the qualifying expenditure element of claims for the staffing side of things, of course. What is allowed is a reasonable apportionment of people's time to go into that. So you might see a percentage of time spent, 10% of someone's time spent in the year, for instance, going into a claim, and that falls under that appropriate apportionment, reasonable apportionment, I should say. Timesheets are going to enhance that massively, provide more detail for them, and if that is feasible, even at a fairly high level, that would be a good idea, I think, if possible. Certainly from going forward, if maybe you're already claiming already, you made successful claims, but it seems that if you can start to build up some of that information, that would be a good idea, like an R&D diary, if you like, perhaps as well.
Brilliant. And is it available for new R&D technical unit CapEx expenditure?
So for R&D tax relief, it's capital expenditure is not a qualifying cost, unfortunately. It's more to do with P&L costs, salary costs, subcontract costs, and so on. However, there are benefits for capital expenditure for a business generally via capital allowances, but also there's something called RDAs, which are research and development allowances. So for instance, if you're building a laboratory in which to do R&D and you're not claiming full capital allowances on that, there's an opportunity to claim research and development allowances for that expenditure as well. So not into an R&D tax relief scheme claim, but available in other ways potentially.
Through capital allowances, great. And then another one on the chat, what changes are there on allocating office salaries to R&D?
As far as I'm aware, I don't think there are any changes to that. So if we're referring to what's called qualifying indirect activities, so activities that are quite specified in the guidance from HMRC to support the R&D activity of the business, I don't believe there are any changes coming along for that. So in terms of the changes that we have discussed, the rates available on those costs will change as they will for all of the costs, but nothing substantial for that one.
Great. And that's it from on the chat. Has anybody got any questions they want to raise a hand or just shout out? I mean, it is, Tom and I go out and see quite a lot of companies across, as we said, the Midlands and the Northwest. And it is fair to say that every business is different. What you do in different areas. So one manufacturer, you can't just broad brush and say it's the same as every other manufacturer. So we're just keen to make sure that you're not missing out on something that you potentially could claim and help with your cash flow, profits, whatever that may be, and B, that if you are currently doing that with the new changes that are coming up, that you're still going to be able to do those compliantly and correctly and make sure that you don't get any stumbles going forward.
Matt, is it true to say that the last time, I mean, I've heard this story many times, that there's lots and lots of businesses don't claim when they should be claiming? Is that correct? Is that still correct?
I think it's an interesting question at the moment. I think that there are going to be a lot of, so 80,000 claims made a year. There are going to be a lot of businesses who can probably benefit but aren't doing, either because they're in a sector that might not be as obvious for them to be able to make a claim, or they might not being undertaken by their business meets the bar of the qualifying expenditure. And also conversely to that, there is all these changes coming along from HMRC, almost suggesting that there are a lot of businesses claiming now that maybe shouldn't be, if we could say that. So there's a bit of a mixture, I think, of there are going to be businesses who are missing out because maybe they think it's too much effort to put a claim together, and hopefully it's not quite as burdensome as you might expect. But yeah, I think it's a bit of a mixture. I'm not sure whether several years ago that might have been the case. There's many companies who are not claiming, but that's probably less the case now, I would suggest.
Thank you, Lisa. Not wishing to pick on the people I know, but you know, when you put your claim in, does it normally tend to be quite a substantial amount of money in there? It's obviously worthwhile doing, presumably, but
yeah, it definitely is worthwhile doing. Yeah, and I do and this has been really helpful actually, because my accountant is not very good at explaining things, so I'll kind of Google everything I have to do and then try and do the best that I can, and then they either say yeah that's all right or no it's not. But yes, I mean I think I got something like £6,000 back off my corporation tax, the last R&D claim, which was quite good. So,
Yeah.
and I do, like you said, I do an R&D log. So everything I do for R&D, I just do it as an email I send myself. And the date I've done something, what I've done, the time that I've spent on it, and then I appropriate that to the hours, you know, the company hours that we would do as our hourly rate, and that's how I work it all out. So, you know, so that's quite, so it is quite helpful. And yeah, and I do write quite a very long rambling narrative to go along with it as well. HMRC probably get very bored and go, yeah, we'll just give her that.
That's a good idea. Is it something have you been claiming for this for quite some time, Lisa, or is it relatively recent? Or
we didn't do anything last year, but the year before we did put in quite a big claim, and this year I'm going to be claiming again. So it's kind of yeah, it is quite an ongoing thing, trying to think about how things we can do differently in the sector, how I can change processes so that they become more sustainable. So I'm instead of using products that can't be recycled, how I can use change it and change practices so I can use products that can be recycled. Then it's testing those products, you know, and seeing whether they're up to task and whether that it will work in the situations that I want it to work in. And so I quite enjoy it, actually. It's nice to do something a bit different.
I think it's good when somebody's so well organized, really. That's one of the key takeaways, I think, from today. It makes sure everything's logged down, and to have that supporting evidence if anybody starts questioning the sort of claims you're putting through. But
I think we see that quite a bit, don't we, Tom? Where when it's your first claim, you're almost looking back and trying to then collate the information. But once you know what information is then requested and what you need to do going forward, you just automatically, like Lisa does, you just automatically start to log it or record it or look out for it a bit more, because you know then it's going to benefit you at the end of the year.
I think Ian's got a question. I can see there's a little hand up signal down the bottom there. I'm not sure whether I don't think we've got Ian on the audio, have we, unfortunately? Can you read that at all?
Let me see. I can't see. It's not in the chat. Am I missed something?
Unless it was me. It might be me. I'm not sure. Are there any other questions for anybody else at all? Or
yeah, I've got a quick question, if you don't mind. So this is new to me. I'm predominantly on the sales side for my business, but the idea is that we might be looking at producing a new product. And does it have to be a completed process? Because the design and development of that new product might take 12 months before we've even produced anything. So can we still put an R&D claim in for the design stages and the development of it, even though we haven't produced a product?
Yes, that's a really good question. So in brief, the answer is yes, you can. The R&Ds for the stages of development that have seen you achieve that advance or work to achieve that advance. So that can be in the very early stage of new product development, overcoming the uncertainties again. In terms of the timeframes, it's provided through your corporation tax, i.e. your company year end. So it's done on an annual basis, but absolutely the R&D activity and the projects are going to kind of skirt that before and after. So for instance, if you start something mid-year, if by the end of your financial year, you haven't got a physical product, you've incurred costs up to that point. So you'll be able to make a claim as your first part of your development. And then I guess if it takes another year, your following year, you might have got a physical product that's maybe in the market or maybe another year after. And so you just keep claiming until that product or project has achieved those advances that you've been seeking and overcome those uncertainties. So it's all about the admin is your company year end and corporation tax year end, but the practicality is the length of time of the project. Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Or is
how
that
would
something
you
completely new, or is it like a variation on a theme perhaps, or is it a completely new product you're looking at?
Yeah, so it'd be a slight variation. So we build fueling equipment, so fuel diesel pumps and things like that. So we might be looking at, obviously we're being asked about electric charge points, for example. So it's another way of fueling a vehicle, but it's a different type of fuel. So it's a slightly different product But it will need, design work, development. To us, it would be a new product, something we've not done before.
And how's Paul best setting that out then? Is it best just to log timesheets and?
I think so. I think if it's possible for the team to, like Matt says, log timesheets or people involved in the project, what they've been doing, expenses incurred in maybe prototypes or materials, etc., that you needed to help make the development. Any kind of log, I guess, similar to what Lisa was mentioning for hers, would be a good idea. And also, maybe, if you can call it a diary or whatever you like to call it, of just what's happened and when, because it's as we all know, time flies, and it would be probably quite interesting for you to see how that goes, or maybe even just relating to product development plans that you've got internally. Just something that helps outline it and gives you something as a starting point to start building a claim.
Right.
The one thing I would also point out as well, I was mentioning to Graham earlier, but in a previous life, I used to work for the Chamber of Commerce up in Staffordshire, and I was head of their funding department, so access to finance, grants and growth. If you are doing R&D projects, it's always worth just checking with your chamber or the Growth Hub locally as to if there's any funding that's available. It is going through a bit of a dry patch at the moment whilst European funding is coming to an end. But if you go on, I'm sure there's a Growth Hub in most areas. If you go on their Growth Hub pages and have a look, another good place to look is Innovate UK, which is a government, central government funding for new innovation products. And they have what they call competitions. They tend to be larger scale, but Paul, if you're doing anything with energy, batteries, or anything along those lines, you always tend to find that that's one of the hot topics for funding and support. So it's just to investigate, to make sure, you're not missing out on something that's available to you.
Brilliant. I'll take a look. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Lack, any questions at all, or any more questions?
If anybody wants to follow up with a question that's more personal to their business or whatever, then I'm sure Graham can share contact details for Tom, and we'll happily have a conversation or a chat. No obligation. I'm a bit slightly biased towards Tom, but where Tom is really good is if he doesn't feel that you've got a strong enough case to make a claim and it could be questioned in the future, he'll be open and honest with you and advise you that, rather than we do see it in other areas where they'll just put claims through just for the sake of putting claims through, whereas we want to make sure that you're protected as well. So we will always make sure that it's right and valid for you.
Lovely. Yeah, if anybody's got any questions, please, I think you've all got my contact details. I'll happily forward them on. I think we've probably got to the end of the questions there. I think, Matt, haven't you?
Yeah, no, can't see any more. But like I say, if you think of anything or you want to run anything past Tom, then by all means just contact directly and we'll happily help.
Yeah, and just on behalf of the Chamber, Matt, thank you for yourself and for Tom for such a really good presentation. I think it's such an important topic. I do get asked these kind of questions quite a lot, so I'm always happy to refer things through to you guys. Thank you very much for doing such a good job. This has been recorded as well, so what I'm going to do, if you don't mind, for people who haven't shown up this morning, I'll send them the recording over, and hopefully we'll get a bit of extra traction from that, if that's okay.
Just apologise for my technical glitches halfway through, Graham.
No, that's fine. I'm always I always wake up in a cold sweat the night before doing this sort of thing. I'm just thinking, hoping like how that the volume works and the pictures work. So thankfully we've not had any major issues really. But thank you again for your time, and thank you to Lisa and everybody else that's been on the call. And hopefully you've learned something from it. And the most important thing is we don't want to be paying extra tax if we can afford, if we can get away with it really. So yeah. So thanks very much again. Thank you, everybody, and hope to see you again next time. So thanks very much. Thank you. All the best.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. See you.
See you now.
See you. Bye. Bye-bye.